Welcome back. The Democratic Alliance leaders are locked in budget crisis talks, and this comes after the party issued a statement saying that it will file papers in the Western Cape High Court to challenge Parliament's passing of the 2025-2026 national budget. And this comes after the National Assembly adopted the 2025 fiscal framework and revenue proposal as tabled by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana by a majority, slight as it was. Now, a total of 194 votes were cast in favour, while 182 were against. The adopted framework includes recommendations that Treasury must be given 30 days to come up with alternatives to tax hikes, while scrapping the value-added tax hike and to adjust personal income tax brackets. For reaction now, we are joined virtually by the DA, a Member of Parliament and National Spokesperson, Willie Aucamp. Willie, thanks so much for your time this morning. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning. Always nice to be with you guys.
So, firstly, those last-minute talks that we are hearing about, budget crisis talks, can you confirm that the DA is, in fact, at this point, deliberating on these matters?
Well, the Democratic Alliance certainly is talking inside the structures of the party with each other on this. It is a pity that when we delivered our papers with regards to the proposals that we had with this budget already on the 12th of March, when the budget was eventually announced, that the ANC did not take earnest of that document. If they would have seen that the proposals that we made were extremely reasonable, was non-politically aligned, it was there to serve South Africans. And unfortunately, yesterday we had a fiscal framework that was approved by Parliament, but with a very flimsy majority. The ANC had the option to make use of the DA and to get us in as their biggest partner in the government of national unity. And between the ANC and the DA, we could have had support of at least 62% of Parliament. Now, the ANC yesterday opted to go with smaller parties that gave them a very flimsy majority. Even if all those parties' members were in Parliament, they would have had 202 votes, which is just one vote more than what you would normally need for a majority in Parliament. So I think this is putting South Africa on a very difficult path. If they think that they are going to be implementing this budget with that flimsy majority, it's really going to be tough for them.
Well, Willie, what we are hearing in terms of how all of this played out, at least over this week, was that the DA was negotiating in bad faith. The ANC have come out to say that the Democratic Alliance wanted to trade off on some other policy issues in return for the DA voting for this particular budget or making the necessary sort of adjustments that you were proposing. Is that true? Did you try to trade off on other policy issues?
That's absolutely not true. That is absolutely not true. I heard yesterday afternoon that Minister Gwedi Mantashe said that the DA wanted to bring in Bella and the NHI. We never brought in Bella in these negotiations for the budget. Not at all. So he is lying when he says that. We never brought in the NHI until the ANC showed us that they broke their promise and their undertaking during the MTBPS, where certain agreements was reached with regards to the NHI. Until that time, we never brought NHI to the table. But when they did that, we had no choice but to discuss the NHI, because the NHI will have devastating consequences to the economy of South Africa. So it absolutely has got everything to do with the budget. Same with the Expropriation Act. Who wants to come and invest in South Africa? Let's say go and build a factory. If that person is afraid that government might, by the stroke of a pen, expropriate that land, we saw and we hear what people say with regards to investment. So what the Democratic Alliance said with the Expropriation Act is that we must make sure that at all instances, a court must have the final say of the valuation of a property, and that the words just and equitable must be used. President Ramaphosa was part and parcel of the drafting of our constitution. And the words just and equitable is in that constitution. So we are actually only asking the president to implement what he wrote in the constitution of this country. So it's not as if we are politicizing that. The Expropriation Act and the NHI definitely stands slap bang in the middle of economical growth in this country. And what we've asked with regards to those two is not to scrap it or to turn it around immediately, especially with the Expropriation Act, but it was two small changes. All the other information in that 14-page document speaks of other forms of economic reform. But everybody, and especially the ANC, tried to concentrate on this whole thing of the Expropriation Act, and therefore they tried to politicize that, whilst this is part of a larger document explaining the steps that South Africa so desperately need to turn this country around.
So the big question now is, where does this leave the government of national unity? And I was just reading in the papers earlier, but of course it is something that had been ventilated this past week in the lead up to yesterday's budget vote, that President Ramaphosa had said to the ANC that the DA, if they fail to vote for this budget, are defining themselves outside of the GNU. So where to from here? Because we also heard yesterday in reaction that some of the other GNU partners or others that voted for the budget saying that if the DA ministers are voting against this budget, they should not be the ones to implement it. So where does that leave the DA now?
I think firstly that we've got to look at the statement by President Ramaphosa. He should have asked himself, where does it leave him? If he does not respect his biggest partner in this GNU and does not want to implement one single proposal that we've made to him, is he at this negotiating table with good intentions? Or is he still trapped in the wrought idea that the ANC still governs alone? I think President Ramaphosa made a big mistake here. He could have really worked with his partners. He could have led his country, and he should have led his party to tell them, listen to the Democratic Alliance's proposals. So that is where the whole problem started, is where the ANC just said to us, you've got to support our budget because you are our partner in this GNU. How absurd is that? To expect from a political party to just bluntly support your budget when you know full well that there are measures and clauses in your statement of intent that said that there must be sufficient consensus on everything that you decide on. The president knows that document exists. The ANC signed that document, and that document said that sufficient consensus must be reached, and that is only reached when parties within the GNU that represents at least 60% of the seats in the National Assembly agrees to something. Where is the sufficient consensus in this? There can be no sufficient consensus if one party acts like a bully and just expects the other party to do what he says. It's not how it's going to work.
But doesn't this then take you back to the fact that that document essentially has really no standing in the Constitution or on any legal grounds? That is why the ANC can do what they've just done. But again, Mr. Aucamp, where does it leave the DA now? Is the DA going to remain within the GNU? What are you going to do apart from the court action?
Let me first answer you on that document. I would like to believe that I can trust my partners and that they will do what they say and say what they do, especially if they signed a document. The Democratic Alliance is a party that you can trust. I think the ANC, by just driving that document aside, showed that they are not really a trustworthy party. They signed a document, but they do not really implement that. With regards to where the Democratic Alliance is standing at this stage, it's going to be very difficult for the Democratic Alliance to be passengers on a bus, but have absolutely no say in where that bus is going. The Democratic Alliance's federal executive will meet over the next 2 days, and we will decide our position and decide the way forward, and it will be communicated on the appropriate times. We have also filed court papers to challenge the irregularities that was committed at the Portfolio Committee meeting, and we believe that we will be successful in that. So there are a lot of options on the table for us, but our federal executive will take those decisions with regards to our way forward in this GNU.
So let's just sketch a few scenarios. So in the scenario where the DA remains within the GNU, how do you expect this relationship to proceed, given what has been said during these negotiations for the budget vote? And of course, seemingly some very hard lines drawn. We heard during the debate yesterday what was said, and some of your alliance partners were very clear in saying that the DA must go.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult. Let's not beat around the bush here. Should the Democratic Alliance stay within this GNU, it's going to be difficult because we did not have any say in the drafting of this budget, and it would now be expected of us to implement that. So it's definitely not going to be easy to stay in there. And if you are staying in there to make it practically work, how can you implement a budget that you do not believe with? We will be punished by people if we are going to implement the same ANC financial policies that we saw them using over 30 years, that were creating unemployment that we've never seen before in this country, that created poverty that this country has never experienced before. And the Democratic Alliance would not want to be complicit in strengthening the ANC's hand to again just run this country down the ground. We entered this government of national unity to make changes to the lives of South Africans. And we said that every decision that we make will be based on whether it is growing the economy and secondly, creating jobs. And that is what we are here for. This budget will most certainly not do it. This budget is hampering the poorest of the poor, whether you live in Cape Town or whether you live in Bankara, north of Kuruman. Come this winter, you will have to buy a blanket. And now you will have to pay more taxes on that blanket because VAT has been raised. And those are things that the Democratic Alliance wanted to prevent. So the Democratic Alliance is committed still to make the lives better for every South African. Whether we do it inside or outside of this GNU, where we govern in the Western Cape and in so many other municipalities, that is irrelevant. The Democratic Alliance will serve the people of South Africa wherever we are. And we will make those decisions within the next coming days.
Well, so much more I'd love to ask, but unfortunately we're out of time. I have to leave it there. Willie Aucamp, thank you so much for your time and engagement this morning. Willie Aucamp is the DA Member of Parliament and National Spokesperson, reacting to Parliament passing the 2025 fiscal framework.